What is up, everyone? I hope you're all having a great day. Now, long-term viewers of this channel will know this aquarium here as our Axolotl aquarium, and it is home to our 4 rather chunky axolotls, and we have had them for many years. I'll be honest, I've lost count for how long we've had them, but the main question I get on a lot of the videos when I include this tank is, wow, that's a big tank for axolotls. Do I need that big an aquarium to start out with? And to start with, no, you do not need this large an aquarium. You can start with a much smaller aquarium, and that's how I started with these axolotls. And that's what I want this video to be. I want this video to be the starting point for someone who wants to keep axolotls. It's all very well me having this 345 litre 4-foot aquarium, but educational wise, it's actually better if I show you where these guys and girls started. And that is in here. This is my fish garage, which is where I'm going to be doing all my projects going forward. And the ideal thing is I have the same size aquarium that I started out with all those years ago when we first got axolotls. And I will swap between I got axolotls and we got axolotls because they are definitely more my wife's pets than they are my pets. She definitely wanted Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, and an axolotl was the next best thing. So this is the aquarium, or at least this is the size we started out with many years ago. So the first thing you want to start looking at when wanting an axolotl is what size aquarium you are starting out with. Now, like I say, if you're going for a juvenile, a small axolotl to start out with, something around the 60 to 70 litre mark, this one's a 55, will be absolutely ideal. You can keep an eye on your axolotl, you can make sure it's getting food, you can make sure there's no sort of uneaten food and waste sitting around in the back of the aquarium. Yeah, it's an ideal aquarium. Most people will say you need like a 4-foot or a 5-foot aquarium, and yes, eventually once they grow, like my group in the front room, yeah, you will need a bigger aquarium because they're not a small animal, they are a chunky animal. But there's no point in buying a massive great aquarium and chucking a very small axolotl in there, because I'll be honest, you're probably going to lose sight of it. It's probably not going to find all the food you put in there. You're probably not going to find all the waste it creates in there. So a smaller aquarium is better to start with. Now, a mistake I've seen a few people make, in all honesty, is buying an aquarium that is tall or narrow rather than one that's got a decent footprint on it. Axolotls don't need a great deal of height to their aquarium. They're not swimmers, they're not like fish. So really you want somewhere that they can waddle about and move around, because, well, that's where they're going to spend most of their time, is on the bottom or climbing through caves or climbing through plants. They are going to want to hang on to things rather than be swimming around in the aquarium. So once you've picked the size of aquarium you're going to go for and what you can fit in, the next thing is the equipment that is going to run your aquarium. Now, the main thing is obviously filtration. Now, filtration is a bit of a tricky one because you want to keep that water clean, but having a power filter that's going to churn the water around, even though it'd be good for picking up waste and uneaten food, it's not going to be great for the axolotls because they're not strong swimmers and their little grabby hands aren't great when they're being forced down through a river. So gentle filtration is ideal. This is a little waterfall filter, so you can see it returns the water through that little grill there. So it's just going to be a nice gentle flow of water into the aquarium. It should still keep the aquarium clean, but it's going to be much gentler for the axolotl. The other thing is air-driven filters. So these just rig up to an air pump. They sit in the back of your aquarium, and the air comes out the top and sucks all of the waste into this really large sponge that you see around the outside. It's a personal preference thing, to be honest with you. If it's me, I lean towards the waterfall power filters a little bit more than I do the sponge filters, just on a personal preference. Both of them will work for a small axolotl, and as they grow you can upgrade the filter, make it bigger, make it stronger, but you do need to make sure you're keeping up with their waste. Now, the other thing with axolotls is the lighting. So you don't want really bright lights in their aquarium. Very dim, very low lighting is perfect for them. Maybe even running it only 3 or 4 hours a day if you're not going for live plants or you're going for hardy plants like I've got in my main tank, like the Anubiases and Java ferns. Keep the lighting really low. They don't like bright lighting, so you don't want to be going out and buying Plant Pro lighting that's all singing, all dancing, really bright. Something dim and low like these tanks here will be absolutely ideal for them. And then lastly, when it comes to equipment, Heaters and chillers. Well, in theory, you will not need a heater for an axolotl unless you live in the Arctic, because they like it cooler. You can go and watch my axolotl like fish file. It's not a fish, is it? It's an amphibian. But anyway, you can go and watch my axolotl video on all the different temperatures and pHs and things like that if you want to know all of that information. But they do like it cooler. So really, heaters, throw it away, get rid of it. If you're buying a kit, don't use the heater, because the heater will not set cold enough to be good for an axolotl. But on the other hand, you can get chillers. Now, chillers are quite pricey. You are looking quite an expensive unit, so really trying to find somewhere suitable in your home where it doesn't get too hot, not next to radiators, not in direct sunlight, not in really hot rooms, will be ideal, because you do want to keep those axolotls on the cooler end of the spectrum. Now, alongside the electrical items that you're going to need for your axolotl, there are some cleaning items that you are going to definitely want to invest in, so it makes your life easier and, let's be honest, makes the success of your aquarium far easier. So things like a fish net is going to be ideal, because catching out any uneaten food, maybe, you know, if you're having real plants in there, you can net out leaves and all the sorts of things like that. Having something like a gravel cleaner or a siphon is ideal, because again, removing axolotl poop or siphoning the gravel and making sure everything's clean, not gravel. We'll get to that in a minute when we talk about decoration, but you do want to keep fine sand or no sand at all, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, a siphon or something like that that's going to help you remove the water will be ideal. Aquarium safe sponges to give that glass a wipe down, or if you don't want to get your hands wet, a magnet cleaner. Half of it goes on the inside of the aquarium, half on the outside, and then you can move it around without getting your hands wet. And then the last item, obviously a bucket to be able to put water in and chuck water back in and chuck water out, and so on and so on. Make sure you're only using that for your aquarium though, because, well, you don't need any soaps or car shampoo or anything like that getting into your aquarium. And then lastly, when it comes to things that you're going to need to get for your axolotl, it's foods and liquids and all the items that you're going to be using to keep them happy. Now, firstly, for the consumables, you're going to want an axolotl safe dechlorinator. Now, I use all of the NT Labs axolotl products, and their dechlorinator is called AxoSafe. This is going to get rid of all of the heavy metals, chlorines, chloramines, all of that sort of thing, and it's aloe vera free, which means it is safe for use with axolotls. There are a lot of dechlorinators out there that are designed for fish and not axolotls, so you need to be really, really careful when selecting this. That's why I use only axolotl products from NT, so I know they've all been tested and made sure that they are safe for axolotls. The other thing you're going to want is something like a bacterial booster. Now, AxoStart is that. It's filter bacteria that will help break down all that waste and all that poop and horribleness that the axolotls are going to be doing in your aquarium. This will help with that. So it is, again, designed for axolotls to be safe with them, and it is a perfect thing to go hand in hand with the dechlorinator. Now, the other thing I do use regularly in the axolotl aquarium is the Axotonic salt mixture. Now, the reason for that is I'm in a really soft water area, and this salt mixture, and it's not salt in the common sense of like table salt, but that will stabilize the pH, GH and KH and help you get the optimum levels for an axolotl. Where I'm in a really soft water area, if I was just to be using normal tap water, they probably wouldn't do so well. So this just supports them and gives them a bit of helping hand and makes sure my water is correct for them. And then lastly, you want a decent quality staple food for them. So something like the junior or adult pellets from the NT Labs range are perfect for this, because they are just a staple pellet food. Obviously, I'm using the adult ones now. I was using the junior ones up until recently, but they are certainly big enough now that I've moved up to those. And that's a great food for just a general day-to-day food. You are going to have to mix it up a little bit to keep them happy, but we'll go through that in a minute. I actually forgot to include two products in that, which I do keep in my arsenal as a, as a checkup and a just in case. One of those is a test kit. Now, obviously, a decent liquid test kit is ideal, because what you find is, well, let's be honest, you don't want to go spending a lot of money on setting up an aquarium, having it look nice, having a beautiful axolotl in there. for you only to have something go wrong with the water at 7, 8 o'clock at night, not be able to get to your local aquarium store, and your axolotl to have real severe problems. So having a test kit on hand just to be able to check the water and test it and make sure everything's doing right is a must. And then the other product that I do keep on hand is AxoCure. Now AxoCure is like a medicinal bath designed for axolotls. So I just keep that on hand just in case there's any problems. I did have a little niggly issue with one of mine a little while ago that, yeah, I thought there was going to be a problem. It wasn't a major one, but I did bathe them in that as a precaution just in case. But you can always pop out to the shop and grab one of those. So I just want to give a massive shout out and thank you to NT Labs for supporting and sponsoring the channel. Without them, I wouldn't be able to make the amount of content and the amount of educational content that I do that hopefully helps all you guys and girls, well, in today's case, succeed with keeping an axolotl. I've been using NT Labs products for a long time now. It's definitely into double digits. It's quite scary to think of that, to be honest, and that's how I know I can trust them. I've always used their products. I've never had a bad product from them, so yeah, I just trust their brand. So yeah, massive thank you to them. But let's get back into the garage so I can show you what needs to go and decorate your new axolotl aquarium. So before we get into decorating your new axolotl starter aquarium, just a quick note on feeding. So my boys and girls generally get the NT Labs axolotl pellets probably 4 or 5 days of the week. Most of the time adult axolotls will feed once a day, but as they grow their metabolism slows, so you may need to feed them less. Certainly when they're juveniles and babies, you might be feeding 2 or 3 times a day right at the start to make sure they're getting enough food. But that's something you're just going to have to watch your axolotl for, keep an eye on and make sure they're actually eating it and it's not going stale somewhere, not floating to the back of the aquarium or whatever. But yeah, maximum 2 or 3 times a day for youngsters, probably once a day for adults. And then the other thing is obviously what foods they are getting. So as I say, that is their staple pellet that they get most of the time. But I do mix that up with treats and with other bits and pieces. So you can get things like dendrobina worms that when they're small, you might need to chop them up. As they grow, you'll be able to feed them whole. And then things like frozen fish foods like daphnia and blackworm and bloodworm and brine shrimp and all of those different things as well. You can feed them as a little treat to give them a variety in their diet. The more variety you give them, the better they will generally do. But as a staple diet, the pellets are perfect, and then you can just mix it up as you go. Now next I want to talk about substrate and what you're going to put on the bottom of the aquarium. Now you can go in and you can see all sorts of wonderful coloured gravels and sands and bits and pieces like that. But with substrate and axolotls, you have to be super careful, especially when they're small. Now when they're small, things can, it sounds horrible, block them up. So if you were to use something like a gravel like this, that would definitely cause problems. What you'll find is they will find a piece in there that they can eat, it will get lodged, and it won't end well for the axolotl. Even smaller grain sizes of gravel can cause problems. So when they're young, you either want to do 2 things. Keep them on a bare-bottomed aquarium, so nothing in there, keep it clean, and that way you can pick up any uneaten food and stuff like that. You can include a few smooth rocks so that they can grip onto and climb onto. I actually done one of my old axolotl aquariums when those guys were babies, and I actually done it in like pieces of slate, smooth slate, and I made it like a patio or like a decking. So I just done them all these pieces of slate, and then I just used to siphon in amongst the cracks when I needed to and make sure there's no uneaten food in there. And then when your axolotls grow up a little bit, you can certainly use fine sands in the aquarium because it will pass through them. I use a lot of the very fine sands in my axolotl aquariums and never have any issues, but you still want to be wary of it. You don't want any pieces of gravel in there, you don't want anything that's going to get lodged in their mouth, small pebbles, anything like that, because it can spell disaster for them. But yeah, really it's just using your head and looking at your axolotl and making a decision. The safer option is always the best option when it comes to them, because they're not the brightest of buttons. They aren't. They are just, well, they're just going to go around and bite things. They are going to eat things, and if it's on the floor of their aquarium, they're probably going to give it a go. So even when they're adults, keep the gravel out of the aquarium. Anything that will fit in their mouths, either go bigger than what they will fit in their mouths or really really, really fine and you shouldn't have any problems. Now, the other thing when thinking about what's going to go inside your axolotl aquarium alongside the sand, or maybe no sand at all, is rocks, wood, decorations, caves, all sorts of things like that. Now, most of the time, as long as those decorations are smooth and not got any sharp edges, you shouldn't have any problems. Axolotl skin is sort of, I don't know, like a wet tissue really. Anything sharp, it can cause problems. So just be very, very wary. Rounded cobbles, rounded river rocks, rounded pieces of slate, things like that are all perfect for using in there because it's not going to bother them. You can also use pieces of wood. Weirdly, I've got one up behind me, but you just want to make sure that there's no sharp edges, nothing that they're going to catch themselves on. The other option is that you use things that, well, maybe are designed to just emulate a cave. You know, you can get lots of nice plastic or resin ornaments that simulate a cave. Again, I'm going to say it 100 times, just check that they're not sharp in any way, shape or form. The other thing that I've seen used and looks quite good is terracotta plant pots. As long as they're not broken and as long as they've not got any sharp edges, again, no sharp edges, again, it creates a nice little cave for them, somewhere to hide. They don't like being out in the light, they like being able to get away, and that's why I've built that huge cave system in my aquarium, because they can just scatter themselves all around, they can get away from each other if they want to, and all the rocks in there are smooth and rounded. And then lastly, live plants. They are a great thing to help with the water quality in an axolotl aquarium. The one thing you've got to bear in mind is obviously you don't want the lights to be too bright, so picking aquarium plants that are lower light loving is ideal. Things like anubiases and java fern, which is what I've got in my axolotl aquarium now, or even things, if you can have an open top aquarium, you could have floating plants in there because that would diffuse the light really nicely and stop the axolotls from being sort of bombarded by LEDs from above. But yeah, really just picking the plants to suit the aquarium is ideal. Most of the time, like I say, I stick to the hardy stuff in the axolotls. They do like uprooting things, they do like moving things, so any plant planted in the substrate, in my world, normally gets uprooted and turfed out, whereas things like the anubiases and java ferns, I can glue them or tie them to rocks, and the axolotls can't move them and get rid of them. So yeah, that works quite well. Now, I do touch on this on the other videos I've done about axolotls, but I think it's important as a beginner or a starter person coming into the world of axolotls, it's probably important for me to mention it here. And I've already mentioned it actually quickly, and that is water conditions and water temperatures. You know, we are not talking about tropical bettas or anything like that. We are talking about these axolotls needing it below, 18 degrees Celsius really. So if your house does run at 20 or more, you may need to look at getting some form of chiller or some form of fan to blow across the surface of the water to cool it down essentially. Now, in the many years of keeping the axolotls here, I have managed to keep them mostly below the temperature that I need to. There has been a few summers where I have had to move them out into my garage, where I can keep them essentially in an aquarium in the garage where it is a lot colder, and that has worked well. But it is something to bear in mind. Temperature is a big thing for axolotls, and if you're not going to be able to keep them below 18 degrees, you really need to make some sort of decision on how you're going to do it. As I've already said, chillers can be expensive, but they do work really, really well. And having a lid off of the aquarium and having a fan blowing across the aquarium will also help dissipate heat. But it is just going to be whether it's going to do enough depending on how warm your house is. And then the other thing is, when it comes to water conditions, is things, well, I've already talked about the test kit. So ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, pH, all those things are well worth keeping a look at and making sure they are correct. If you don't know what the aquarium nitrogen cycle is, you can go and watch my video on that, and that'll explain how all of those things work and how a filter sort of deals with them and processes them to make them safe for your aquarium, because you do want to make sure your axolotl aquarium is cycled before putting anything in there, and that's where that bacteria is going to come in and help you do that. And yeah, you want to be making sure that you know what you're testing and you know what you're looking for in the water conditions, again, to make sure you're going to succeed with this. Now, the biggest mistake that I used to see a lot of people making when it comes to axolotls is rushing it, to be honest with you. Going in there, seeing an axolotl that week, picking up an aquarium, racing home, setting it up, and then 5 days later you're back in the shop trying to buy an axolotl. This is something you want to take your time over. You want to succeed at this. This is a long-lived animal that deserves the care and attention. I'm not trying to preach, but I love these guys. They are awesome and they're so much fun to keep, and I just want more of you to succeed and to have fun keeping them, because they are the most derpy, stupid animal to watch, but they are just awesome. And yeah, the biggest thing that if I could get one thing across to you is don't rush it. Don't rush, take your time, do your research, go and listen to a few other videos, go and watch a couple more of my videos on these guys, and just make sure you're getting everything right, because the more prep work you do, the more success you're going to have. So everything that we've gone over in this video is pretty much how I started with these guys many years ago. So I hope you found it simple and easy to follow, and yeah, if you want more info on them, you can go and watch the Axolotl fish files. It's not fish files, but I call them fish files. And watch this tank being set up twice on my channel, because I think this tank's had 2 different designs in the time that I've been running this YouTube channel. So it's not too many, but this one's going to stay like it because that was a lot of rock and it was really heavy. So yeah, if you've got any more questions on axolotls, drop them down into the comments, or like I say, go watch another video, because I've probably covered it in there, and I'll try my best to answer them and help you guys and girls out and succeed with keeping the axolotl. And yeah, oh, and also I dropped my phone. Also, look, this is the t-shirt that Katie designed. It's my Axolotl t-shirt. I thought I had to wear it for this video. So anyway, I'll see you in the next one.